So for step one, we're going to put the upper portion, which is the gantry, down onto the base. And if you guys maybe can see right over here, we got a few little cutout or slots that the gantry will sit on and holes that bolts go through the bottom. And there are 4 M545s, which are the large black ones here in this bag with all the hardware. And you guys can see they are also labeled here. So quite easy and simple to find them. So we're going to grab the gantry and we're going to set it down right over those holes. Now this part could be a little tricky. However you got to do it and what's easier. So you can just raise it up and put the bolts in while trying to hold this whole thing. Or maybe go off the edge of the table would be easy. Or even use like a spool filament to kind of hold it up so you can start the bolt. But yeah, it just goes underneath there and it's going to come out here at the top as you guys can see. So we're just going to line it up and start them. And we are going to need a wrench, which is the biggest one in the bag, and we're going to run them down. So we're just running them down and not tightening because we need to do the other side also, and you want it to be loose so it can kind of give way if it needs to. So same thing here, we're just going to run them up, but don't tighten them yet. And the reason for that is because we want to run the x-axis here down all the way to the bottom. And the reason we want to do that is because we want the spacing between these two channels to be as close as possible on the bottom. So if you just grab the belt on the top and turn it, you can move the whole thing down, or you can just grab one of the couplers and spin them. But the belt is quicker, a little faster. So yeah, all we're going to do here is just go all the way down. And now we know we're really close to where it needs to be, so we can go ahead and tighten these bolts up really nice and snug. So tighten them up well, but not crazy, as that is the only thing holding the upper portion of the printer. All right, that should be good right there. Now if you do want to, you can go ahead and also check, make sure these bolts on the sides are nice and tight and that your printer is sitting flat, so on a flat table. If you do have any kind of wobble, what you want to do is you want to loosen these and on the other side and then kind of push down on it where it levels out and then retighten the both sides. So mine I think is pretty good right there, so I'm just going to check them just to make sure they're tight, and sure enough on mine here they're pretty snug, but did tighten a little bit. Same thing on this side. And that should be good. And now we have the top portion connected to the bottom. And we'll go to step 2, which is connecting the screen. And if we flip to this side, you guys can probably see the 4 holes there that are threaded. And that's where our screen mount will connect. Well, actually it's just 3 holes. So we're gonna need 3 of the 5 M420 bolts and the wrench. And I'm gonna go ahead and start it here. So the wrench is not quite long enough. It's a little bit hard to get to, but the wrenches do have like this kind of rounded off edge, so you can go on an angle and still turn it, which is nice. I'm gonna pry it up here a bit so maybe you guys can see better, but yeah, I got the 2 started on top and now this one here, and we'll go ahead and snug these up. That should be good right there. And this thing is quite magnetic. As I was putting it on, and notice that the wrench wants to magnetize to it, which means that our screen here should just fall right in and perfectly hold itself, and we can go ahead and plug that in right here. So yeah, pretty interesting. And you know, if you do want to pick it up and look at it towards yourself, it would be a lot easier to, you know, see what you're doing, even though it is at a good angle, which is quite easy to use here too. That is step 2 and 3, which is plugging it in. So for step 4, there's quite a few things going on. We're going to install the spool holder on the top and also the filament detector and a little clip there that guides the wire on the back. So let's start with the spool holder. I believe the spool holding part should be on this side, or at least according to the diagram, which mounts right here on the top. I don't know if you guys can see, but we got a couple threads there where these 2 holes will line up just like that. And we'll use the last 2 M4x20s to secure the spool holder. We'll snug it up right here. Also guys, we can check these bolts here, which is the main frame, to make sure they're nice and tight also. And mine are, which is great to see. And if you guys see this little wire here, this is for the filament detector, which is this guy here. So we have the detector itself that's mounted on a bracket, and then we also have a bolt that was in there that goes through the bracket into the filament holder. And so you want to put this on the side where your spool is. So because it's on this side and because this wire, it'll go right here. So this bolt is made where it tightens, but it still moves around and pivots on there. And the plug itself needs to probably go to the front because you don't want to route it through the back as there is that belt there. So now we're just going to plug the filament detector in here, and that's basically for step 4 except for that little clip. And step 5 is just plugging everything in, which is not very hard at all. And we'll go ahead and start here in the back where we do install the little wire holder, and does come with a little bolt, and that goes right here. If we look here on the side, we can see there's a wire that comes out from the bottom and then it goes up, and the flat part of it has the end which plugs into the hot end. So let's go ahead and plug that in. Now we'll go to the front here so you guys can see a little better, but there is a strain relief. But before we put it in there, we can go ahead and plug it in. So there's like these 2 little tabs that we have to separate if they're not separated already. And yeah, it simply just plugs in. And then they clip together to hold it. And now we can squeeze into the strain relief bracket, and that's how it holds it all together here. So now going back, we can use this clip here to secure this flat wire. But what you want to do is you want to move this as far away as possible to the very edge, and then you kind of know how much you need, and that's where we're going to secure it. I guess we're just going to kind of bunch them up like that. So actually that works out pretty good. It looks pretty clean. We're going to use the bolt that was included, clamp it down right here. And actually it moves in there quite easily, so if you need a little more or a little less, you can move it around. Yeah, simple as that. We definitely have enough slack, and the cable is nice and routed here. Now we do have a couple more plugs that kind of branch out of the cable, and they are labeled, and both of them say X. So the smaller plug is for the end stop switch, and the larger one's for the motor. So we got the switch here and the motor. So the motor gets the bigger plug like that, and the switch goes here. Just like that. So, and that's everything here for this flat wire. But if we look at the back, we got quite a few more things to connect here. So we got a few wires that go from the top down, and they go through the channel and then come out. And this is for the filament detector and also a light up there. So we can go ahead and plug these in. And then also we have the motor here that we need to plug in. And that's everything here. And then the last one is the other Z-axis motor on the other side. And just like that. So the Y is all connected and all good. And that is everything with the wiring. And so for the next part, we need to look at the rollers and adjust if needed, and also check our belts and tensions on that. So we'll start here with the bed. This might have been easier to do it before installing everything if you'd prefer to do that, but you can easily reach it here. But what's going on here is that we got 2 rollers on each side. We got 2 stationary and then 2 adjustable. And so what I like to do is stick my hands under there and see if I can spin them, and they're both way too tight. And hopefully you guys can see that, but yeah, we got the adjustable ones here. So you're gonna need this wrench, and that's how we can adjust the eccentric nut under there. And so we're just gonna turn it a little bit to loosen it until we can get the roller to spin pretty easy. And actually I'm gonna take this build plate off so we don't get it greasy, and same thing for the back. So basically what you're trying to do here is get the rollers to be not so tight around the channel that it rides on here in the middle. So if you can't spin your roller in one spot, that means it's too tight, like a little burnout, and you need to loosen it. But if they're too loose, your bed's gonna wobble back and forth. So right now our bed is not wobbling, but our rollers are loosened up, so we should have a very smooth roll. So if you have any kind of jumping or stuttering in the bed, check your rollers really good. And also a good idea to check the belts. And we can see here the Y belt and the motor. It is pretty good. And our belt seems to be pretty decently centered. And going back to the front, also on our Y axis, you guys can see we have an adjuster here, and we can adjust the tension of the belt. So again, you don't want this to be too tight. So just slightly tight, but definitely don't over tighten it. And it's quite easy to do that. So feel it with your finger. Make sure it's, not too tight. But yeah, that feels actually really good. I think we're good there. So now we can go ahead and check our rollers here on the hot end. And these are actually perfect. They all spin easily, which is a great sign. And what's interesting here on this design is we actually have 4 rollers. Most of the time we only have 3, 2 on the top and 1 on the bottom. But this printer has 2 adjustable rollers on the bottom. And you would do this the same way. You would adjust it where you could easily roll these and kind of do like a little burnout. So if they're too tight, they're not going to roll easily. And if they're too loose, this whole thing's going to wobble. So adjust it to where you have slight tension, where you can still easily turn them. And once you get that, it should be nice and smooth. And also, we do have a belt tensioner for the X-axis here. Mine was definitely over tightened. I'm going to loosen it up a bit and see how that feels. And that's pretty good right there. So unfortunately, we can't see none of our pulleys here and how the belt is running on them. So we're just going to have to, think that everything's fine there. And it does feel all right. So I think I'm just going to leave it right where it is. Going back to the back, we do have rollers here on each side, and mine are all pretty much perfect. They're a little bit looser than they need to be, so I'm gonna tighten them up just a bit. So we got 2 eccentric nuts on the inside and then 2 stationaries on the outside. So these are not very critical, especially for the dual Z axes. As long as they're not binding or, you know, way too loose, you don't have to really do much with these. But I'm gonna tighten mine up just ever so slightly to kind of give it some friction. And that's pretty much it, guys. There's not much more to it. You're pretty much done with everything, assembly and adjustments.